train your Gavin. Read those books in a blink, oh yeah. Grab yourself a hot drink cause you're watching How to Train Your Gavin.
Yep, that's me.
Hey guys, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I'm going through a lot of books. I'm going through my top 50 middle grades that I read in 2020. I was going to do two separate videos. I was going to do my top 40 middle grade books that were released in 2020 and top 20 backlist middle grade books that were released before 2020. I found that to get a little bit confusing because there are some middle grade books that I've read that are coming out in 2021. So I was like, well, I can't put it on either list. And some of these books are among some of my all-time favorite books now. So I really wanted to shout them out in this video. So I'm just going to do my top 50 middle grade books that I read this year. So there will be some backlist stuff. There's quite a lot of 2020 releases in this as well. I also do have, I think, about 4 or 5 books that are coming out next year that I absolutely loved and hope that you guys will as well. If you've been following my channel for a little while, you might already know what a lot of these books are, but I thought it would be quite interesting to do a top 50 because I read 125 middle grade books in 2020 and there were so many amazing books that I could not narrow it down to just a top 10 or even a top 20. Top 30 I was stretching it, but then I was like, oh my god, there's like still some that I absolutely love that doesn't make the top 30. So I just ended up doing a top 50, so here we are. I will have missed like so many books on this list as well, but my top 50 will be in alphabetical order by the author surname. They're not going to be in order of preference or anything. They're just my top 50 middle grade books of 2020. And I do have 15 that came out in 2020 that I have not read yet, and I do just want to quickly shout them out just because I am so excited for them. And just in case anybody's wondering why they're not on the list, it's because I haven't read them yet, but there are 15 that I'm so excited to read. I just haven't got around to yet, so I will quickly list them off, and then hopefully they will be in my top 50 middle grades of 2021. Who knows? So yeah, these are the books. And I won't talk about what these ones are about because I want to talk more about the ones that are actually on this list, but I do want to just quickly show them just in case you guys are interested. Anyway, the first one is Eva Evergreen, Semi-Magical Witch by Julie Abe. Curse of the Night Witch, the first book in the Emblem Island series by Alex Astor. Tamarind and the Star of Ishtar by Jasbinder Balan. Arusha and the Tree of Wishes by Roshni Chokshi. Sky Pirates, Echo Quickthorn and the Great Beyond by Alex English. 1,000 Questions by Sadia Faruqi. The Language of Ghosts by Heather Fawcett. The Danger Gang by Tom Fletcher. Life of Riley Beginner's Luck by Simon James Green. Mic Drop by Shauna Jackson. Return to Raw by Jenny McLachlan. The Beast and the Bethany by Jack Meggett Phillips. The Accidental Wizard by Kimberly Pawley. The Book of Hopes edited by Catherine Rundell with contributions by so many different children's authors and illustrators. And Death Set Sail by Robin Stevens. So yeah, those are all the books that I have not yet read this year, but they did come out this year and I'm excited to read them. So anyway, I'm going to go into my top 50 now and I will talk more about them. I'm not just doing a list or anything. I will say why I love these books and briefly what they're about to see if you're interested in picking them up, which I would wholeheartedly recommend you do so. So anyway, I will get into it. The first book on this list is Amari and the Night Brothers by Baby Alston. This one comes out in January 2021 and I've talked about this so many times on my channel because I've been doing so many recommendations videos for the past few months, and ever since reading this one, oh my gosh, I just keep name dropping it. But yeah, I'm obsessed with this book. This one follows Amari and her older brother went missing. One day she ends up coming across a suitcase in his bedroom where there is an invitation for her to the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. I keep getting tongue twisted when I say that and I don't know why. So Amari ends up getting trained and things at the Bureau, but she doesn't really care about all of that. All she wants to do is find out what happened to her brother. And there is just, there's so many twists and turns in this one. It just takes you on such a journey. It's so imaginative. There are talking elevators. There's so many different supernatural creatures that you get to meet. It just opens up this huge world that is set in a real world. It's one of those books where you could believe it to be true. And if you just look deep enough that you might be able to find the magic hidden beneath. And this is one of those books. And I loved Amari. I loved her as a character. She is such a great one to follow. I love the depiction of family and friendship in this as well, and there's just so much to love about it. It's definitely great for fans of fantasy, and even if you're not typically a middle grade reader, I feel like you would still enjoy it so much because, as I said, the world building in this is just impeccable. So yes, this is my first one in my top 50. Comes out January 2021 in both the UK and America, and I'm sure it will be released worldwide soon after that. The next one I've also talked quite a bit about, but that is Emilia Fang and the Trouble with Toads by Laura Ellen Anderson, also illustrated by Laura Ellen Anderson. And I read all of the Emilia Fang books this year, and honestly all of the books I absolutely loved. This this one is the sort of last Emilia Fang book for now, and you could feel it by this point, so this was a bit of an emotional one for me. But Emilia Fang does follow Emilia, and she is a vampire living in Nocturnia. And Nocturnia is filled with different kind of creatures of the dark, and there are also creatures of the light living in like Glitteropolis, and this one is more children's than it is middle grade, but I haven't read enough children's for me to put it on its own kind of list, so I'm putting it with my middle grade books. But this one, even if you are an older reader, I still feel like you would love it because it has the humour, it has the friendship. I love the world, definitely feels very Addams Family meets Tim Burton kind of vibes with this. And Emilia goes on so many different adventures in each book. In this one, she ends up going to the pond beyond, and it's a place where toads go after they've died, and she has to save her baby brother Vincent. Honestly, at the end of this, I was bawling. I did not want this to be over, and it's just like such a great way to end this. I mean, it might not be the last one ever, but it is the last one for now, and I'm upset. But it's fine because it ended on such a high, so I love this one. Honestly, I've seen a pattern here, 3 books in, and you guys already know what they'll be. Castle Tangled Magic by Sophie Anderson. Yes, this has definitely made my top 50. This is one of the best middle grades I've ever read. I absolutely loved it. This one follows Arya, who lives in this incredible place called Castle Mila. This is inspired by Russian folktales, as all of Sophie Anderson's books are, but you can tell just by the imagery and the illustrations by Sarah Soderlund as well. Like, honestly, they're fantastic. We can feel it in the words that Sophie Anderson writes as well. You can definitely picture it through that. But Castle Mila is this gorgeous place, but there is a storm coming and it threatens to destroy the castle and effectively Arya's family. And Arya ends up finding a kind of hidden portal to a new world in like the attic, and she ends up going on an adventure to save her family. Honestly, like, Sophie Anderson just knows how to write a captivating, magical middle grade that will just stay with you, and there's just always something to take from her works, whether that's to do with like themes of family and friendship, or, you know, even harder themes like death. Sophie Anderson can do it all. There is also a companion in this called Felix, and honestly, absolute adoration. So please do check this book out. Check all of Sophie Anderson's works out. I can't stop saying enough how much I love the Castle of Tangled Magic. It is definitely Sophie Anderson's best one yet. And that's saying a lot considering how much I loved The House with Chicken Legs and The Girl Who Speaks Bear. Sophie Anderson can do no wrong. I love this one. You know what, actually, I'm looking through these books and I think it's more than 50. I'm cheating with this one. But the next ones are Thejumbies and Rise of the Thejumbies by Tracey Baptiste. I found it very hard to separate these two because this is the kind of series where each book takes from the previous book and just adds to it and elaborates on it and just builds this world so beautifully. And for that reason, I didn't want to separate them, so I've included both, and that's how I'm cheating on this. So this one follows Corinne, and she lives in a small village, and there are Caribbean folktales weaved into this world. So we have the Thejumbies, which are kind of creatures that live around the place, and we come across Severin, who is the main kind of villain in the Thejumbies, and I loved the atmosphere and the integration of the folktales within this world. I thought Corinne was a fantastic protagonist. I loved how she met the evil head on, and no spoilers in any of my reviews in this video or anything. And there is a side character who is a witch who is honestly one of the best characters I've read this year. But yeah, I also feel like Tracey Baptiste just did a phenomenal job at building the folktales aspect of it with the Caribbean island that Corinne lives in. It was just so beautifully done. But in the second one as well, children go missing in the area, and it just opens up to more Thejumbies. So yeah, I love both of these books, and they go so hand in hand that I just didn't want to separate them. So yeah. Next up is The Polar Bear Explorers Club by Alex Bell. I read this for Paulathon earlier in the year, and I honestly fell in love with the world. I love the icy landscape of this one, but also the adventure that we find ourselves in. So this one follows Stella, and her uncle is part of the Polar Bear Explorers Club, and they're an expedition of only men. And Stella, she really wants to join this expedition. She really wants to join the Polar Bear Explorers Club, but she is a girl. But she ends up finding a way to be part of the next expedition. And and we come across so many different weird and wonderful things on this adventure. We have carnivorous cabbages, we have yetis, we have so many different wonderful things going on in this world that I also really loved the second and third book in this series. I will always have a huge love for the first one though. I don't know what it is about this one, it felt magical from the word go. Not only is it very adventurous, but it was just really funny as well. Character interactions were just so humorous that I couldn't stop reading it, and I think I read this rather quickly during Polathon, so yeah, I enjoyed this one so much. Alex Bell has created this world where there's also the Ocean Squid Explorers Club coming next year, and the world just keeps building and building and building, and I love a middle grade that builds worlds, so yeah, I love this one. An absolute favourite of mine, all of these are, and one of the absolute favourites of mine is Wonderscape by Jennifer Bell. This one follows three kids, Arthur, Ren and Cecily, and they are in the present day, but somehow this explosion kind of blasts them into the future where everything is this in-game adventure reality sort of thing. So they are in this big huge game that they have to progress through each level to get out of it and get back home, get back to their time. But there are levels like there's a racing level, there is a level on a ship, there is a level at a gothic castle, and they just keep going through and they have to solve a riddle or something to progress and then finally get back home. And this one was just so great. I loved the vibe of this because I do love games. This is definitely perfect for fans of Ready Player One and Jumanji. But yeah, this one, the writing just kept me intrigued throughout the entire thing. I think Jennifer Bell is such a phenomenal writer. I love her to bits. She kept it so action-packed and it was never ever boring. There was never a boring part in this. And that is what I love in my books, is when it just keeps me interested on every single page. There is a historical figure in each sort of level, and I love that aspect of it as well. There was just so many genius things that were incorporated in this book that honestly I do not take for granted. Cannot wait for the next book, which I'm gonna have to wait a while for because it doesn't come out until 2022, but that's fine because this one will definitely tide me over until then, because I can always just reread it, which I probably will end up doing if I want another great time like I did the first time reading this. So yeah, I love this one. Like, honestly, I'm just going to be gushing about all of these books. I hope you don't mind. But the next one I also loved was The Train to Impossible Places by P.J. Bell. This one is the first book in the Train to Impossible Places series, which is ending next month, and it's so heartbreaking. But it's fine because this one was just so magical and adventurous. I'm going to say that about every middle grade. But this one follows Susie, and one day she wakes up to a magical train kind of going through her house, except it's broken down. And this train is like a postal delivery service train where they go to these magical different places delivering mail. There are trolls, there are witches, it's just so many different incredible supernatural creatures in this. But Susie ends up joining them, and the first time she delivers something, everything goes wrong. So it's like a really great escapade kind of adventure. There's so much built into this world as well. There are some great illustrations as well by Flavia Sorrentino that really does add to the world that's being built with the words. Honestly, I had so much fun reading this book, and it was also really fun doing the live show for the Touch of Whimsy readathon with the actual author as well for the book club discussion, so that was really awesome too. So yeah, I just have some great memories attached to this book, and I just think lots of people should read it. Next is an absolute underrated gem of mine that I have mentioned before, but I think more people need to read it, but that is Moonchild, Voyage of the Lost and Found by Asia Bushby. Oh gosh, I love this one. So this one follows a young girl who lives on the sea with her sea witch mothers. And yes, you heard me right, I said mothers. And she also has this cat-like companion known as a djinn, or I think it's a djinni in this book. But our main character Mira, she's never really set foot on land before, but the ship gets into some trouble, so they have to dock, and eventually her djinni ends up getting kidnapped, and we don't know where it's gone, so she ends up going on an adventure to save, I believe it's called Namur, but I keep saying that in a way that I feel like I'm saying it wrong. I think it's Namur. This was very Arabian Nights inspired. I loved the writing style and the way that it incorporated that tone, and it felt a little bit like City of Brass but for kids in a very slight way. Like, that's just like a connection that my mind randomly made. Cannot wait for the second book, which is coming out quite earlier than expected. It's coming out in April. But there was just so many great things about this book that really propelled it to be like one of my favourites of the year. It was just like such a nice surprise for me as well to go into this just being blown away by it. and I think a lot of you guys will love it as well. So I'm gonna put this down and talk about the next one. Orion Lost by Alistair Chisholm. Again, no surprise to absolutely anybody. This was an underrated gem, and me and Jade from JDA Reads, we read this for Middle Grade Monthly. I did read it a few months before that and just absolutely fell in love and got blown away by it, that I was not bothered about rereading it. Like, I reread it only a few months after reading it for the first time, and I did not mind whatsoever. This was so great. This is my first science fiction middle grade that I ever read. But this one follows a group of people who are on a spaceship called the Orion, and they do these space jumps where people have to be induced in a sleep, and then it jumps and they get woken up again. However, during one of these jumps they are attacked, and the parents and all of the adults don't wake up, and a handful of kids do. So these kids have to end up essentially navigating a deep space in a ship that they have no idea how to control. There is also something on the outside that they don't know what it is, and it just, honestly, the tension in this, there is drama, there is twists and turns, and it was so engrossing, and it just surprised me so much as well, because as I said, this was my first science fiction middle grade. I don't read a lot of science fiction, but I feel like this is one that even if you don't read a lot of middle grade, and me and Jade say this all the time, even if you don't read a lot of middle grade, you will probably love this if you're a science fiction fan. So I'm so excited for more from this author. This was one of those books that made me just fall in love with the author completely. Yeah, this was just, oh my god, it needs to be read more by a lot of people. And it should have got more recognition when it came out, but it's fine, it's fine. We are giving it the recognition it deserves today. Next is the first book in the Pandava Quintet series by Roshni Chokshi, and this is Arusha and the End of Time. This one is inspired by Hindu mythology, and we follow Aru, who ends up accidentally unleashing a demon when she was trying to impress her snooty classmates, and she ends up having to try and fix her mistake. She ends up meeting other people as well on her adventure. This is a Rick Riordan's Presents book. I can see rather some similarities to the Percy Jackson series, so if you're a fan of the Percy Jackson series, this would be perfect for you too. And this was a great first novel for a series. I was really captivated by the world that was built in this, and it made me so excited to read next. I'm not usually a big fan of pop culture references in books, however I found quite a few of these to be quite clever and quite funny in this book, and it really did work well with kind of grounding Arusha and making her feel more of a real and relatable character. So I really enjoyed her. She was just a great protagonist. And the world as well that Roshni Chokshi built as well, again, just top notch, top tier, and I cannot wait to read more in the series. I need to get my butt into gear and read them, but I keep doing this. I'm a magpie. I go from series to series and I like to try different things, but it's fine. Next is The Wizards of Once, Never and Forever by Cressida Cowell. Oh my gosh, the last book in the Wizards of Once series, and the first Wizards of Once book, it was, the series can be a little bit silly and a little bit mischievous, and you think, oh, maybe it's just like silly fun and there's not really a point. However, we get to this book and you realise just how clever Cressida Cowell is by plotting like within all of the books in the series and coming to this point, just how clever she is in all of that imagination that she puts into this. This is like chaotic imagination. This is pure imagination. This, I can't even describe how great Cressida Cowell is as a storyteller. And not just that, but the audiobooks for this series is amazing as well, narrated by David Tennant. And the illustrations by Cressida Cowell really does add something extra to the world too. But in the Wizards of One series, we follow Wish and Zor. Wish is a warrior and Zor is a warlock. And warriors and warlocks are raised to be enemies. However, there is this bigger evil on the horizon and they need to join forces in order to conquer it. I was so surprised by how amazing this series wrapped up, because it was a surprise what happened at the end, and I wasn't expecting it whatsoever. It blew me away. Definitely the best in the series, definitely the best book Cressida Cowell has written. Love when a book ends on such a high, and this one definitely ended on a high. Next up is Squid Scratch by Lindsay Curry. I read this one, gosh, so long ago, and it still stays with me. This one follows Claire, whose father runs, or at least helps, on this ghost tour on a bus through Chicago, and she ends up helping him one night, but then she sees a ghost at the back of the bus during one of the ghost tours, and she needs to find out what happened to him. It was so atmospheric. It was so great in the setting it was in. I got such a great sense of Chicago. I've never been myself. I really want to, though. This book makes me want to go to Chicago, even though it was very creepy, and there were some like landmarks in this that I'm sure are so famous in Chicago that I didn't know about previously. But now I feel like I do. I feel like I've been there now. I was so taken by the ghost story in this. I thought it was really captivating. A lot of the moments that happened leading up to like revelations were rather creepy. But yeah, I really enjoyed the ghost story in this. I was so intrigued by what happened to the ghost, what was going to happen next. There was so much danger, and the danger felt real. Again, another fantastically written middle grade book, one that I'm definitely checking more of by the author. This would definitely be a great story to read over a campfire as well, so if you can potentially do that, then pick this one up. It's great. Another 2021 book that is on my top 50 list is Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow by Benjamin Dean. I fell head over heels in love with this book. This is an LGBTQ plus middle grade. This one comes out in February, and it follows a young boy who his family's changed and he doesn't understand quite why, but then he discovers that his dad has come out as gay and he wants to find out more about what that means. So he ends up going on a journey with his friends to find out what it means to be gay. And honestly, this is the book that I wish I had when I was a kid. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I wanted this book as a kid, and it just would have made me feel seen and heard. This is definitely going to be such an important book to put in classrooms and to just give all of the love to, so please do. I was just so charmed by the main character's journey, and yeah, things happen. It does get really exciting as well, and yeah, it's one of the best contemporaries I've ever read. Either middle grade, young adult, it's just one of the best contemporaries I've ever read. So yeah, February 2021, make sure you pick it up. Then we have The Miracle on Ebenezer Street by Catherine Doyle. If you can pick this up before Christmas, please do. Read it on Christmas Eve. I promise you this will be the perfect book to read over Christmas. So this is a Christmas Carol retelling, and this one follows a young boy called George, and he lost his mum years before, and his dad has completely changed, but he also lives with his nan, and they try and keep magic of Christmas alive. However, one day George comes across Mollie's curiosity shop. He picks up a snow globe, and somehow his family are taken on a journey from Christmas past, present and future to see where their family is going and to hopefully give the dad a bit of a wake-up call. I loved the family relationship in this. I loved the emotion and the heart of this book. It was perfect for a Christmassy read. It had all of the elements of A Christmas Carol but embellished it and just made it so much more magical. When you get to the end, like the last kind of half of the book, it's just emotional and it's great. There was a really funny elf in this as well. I love George's dynamic with his nan, and it was again just a great read, so definitely try and pick it up before Christmas. Give it that all-important read. Next is Jungle Drop by Abby Elphinstone. Abby Elphinstone's writing is just some of the most imaginative and creative I've ever seen in a middle grade book, or any book in general. Jungle Drop is the sequel to Rumble Star, however it follows different characters, so if you want to pick this one up first, I believe you can. Although there are some little things in this that kind of is a callback to Rumble Star, so definitely start in order. But if you really want to pick this one up as well, I wouldn't stop you. So this is set in a world where there is the unmapped kingdoms, and there are, I believe there were 4, and in the first one it was Rumble Star, and this one is Jungle Drop, and it was a very like jungle inspired world, which I loved. I love jungle settings. But this one, it follows the Bickery twins, and they do not get along at all. One of them is to inherit the family fortune. One day they're whisked away to Jungle Drop. There is an evil harpy called Morg, who was in the first book as well. She is like the series villain, and it's a race against time against this horrible villain, and it was so exciting. It was short enough to be so punchy, and Abby Elphinstone really does keep you on the edge of your seat. She's so creative with her words and her imagination. She is just, an absolute dream. And it's not often that I see main characters just literally at each other's throats for most of the book, and I loved seeing that. And it was very true to sibling relationships. I felt it was just so heartwarming as well, but also like really great. So yeah, I would recommend the Unmapped Chronicles series by Abby Elphinstone, which this is the second book in it. Solidly in my top 50 is When Life Gives You Mancos by Karine Gettin. This one surprised me so much as well because this is another contemporary middle grade, and it's set on a very small Jamaican island. And the previous summer, our main character Clara, something happened and she lost her memory. So we are going through this summer, and she is kind of starting to get her memory back. We have this revelation, just took me by surprise. Loved the way this was told. It gave me all of the summer island vibes, and it was so atmospheric in that regard, and it just made me want to visit. This book was such a sensory experience. Yeah, I just found Clara such an interesting character, as well as her relationships with her friends. One of her friends is called Gaina, and it was really interesting to see their dynamic, and it blew me away. It blew me away. So yeah, I would definitely have this in my top 50, like 100%. Next in my top 50 is The Shadow Moth by Francesca Gibbons. This is the first book in the Clock of Stars series, and it's also illustrated by Chris Riddell, and it really did give me those Edge Chronicles vibes. This one follows two sisters, one called Marie and one called Imogen. They end up following a moth through a door in a tree, and it takes them to this really magical world. They come across a prince, a very spoiled prince, and part of this kingdom is just so dangerous, and there's so much magic and excitement in it that honestly, even though it's quite a chunky middle grade book, it was thrilling throughout the entire thing. I definitely see in this being one of my favourite series of all time by the time the series finishes. It has that potential, and I get so excited when a book has that potential from just the first book alone. And some of this is so dark as well. I love me a dark middle grade. Loved the relationship with Marie and Imogen. It just felt so natural as well. A lot of these books in this top 50 list have great character sibling relationships, but it was just great to see Imogen and Marie's journey to try and get back home. Some parts of it were so funny, parts of it were dark. It just had everything I wanted in a middle grade. Next, I have Pocket and Stubbs by Sophie Green, illustrated by Carl James Mountford. This was fantastic. This one, it follows a wannabe reporter called Lil, and she lives in, I wanted to say Gotham City, it's Pelican City, but this definitely feels very Gotham City-esque. This is noir, which is one of my favourite words now. This is noir, and it felt it through the writing. That was so atmospheric as well. I'm saying that word a lot, I realise. But then a ghost ends up visiting her called Ned, and he wants her help. And she ends up having to try and navigate Pelican City, all of the corruption that's happening in Pelican City, and really put her reporter skills to the test. There's also a really great detective in this as well, who's like her senior. Character work in this, spot on. The mystery was so intriguing. The world, amazing. I want more books like this, but I don't think I'm going to get any like this for a long time because this was just so unique. Can't wait to read the sequels of this one. I need to get on that as well. I also have Dark Whispers by Vashti Hardy. This is the sequel to Brightstorm, and Brightstorm follows twins Arthur and Maudie. They receive information that their very famous explorer dad has died trying to get to the most southern part of the world, and they think something is up, so they end up going on this incredible adventure to try and find out what happened to their father and who to trust, who to believe. In this one, Dark Whispers, it just carries on with that storyline. There is a bit of a race against time in this, but I just love the whole skyship adventure aspect of this. Again, it's so imaginative. This just took everything I love from Brightstorm and just embellished it, as I like to say. But this one, it just adds to the world, and I love a book that adds to the world. It doesn't take away from it, it doesn't make it boring. This just makes it more exciting. Cannot wait for more in the series. And it's so intriguing. It's so intriguing. So I would definitely wholeheartedly recommend this one. Another in my top 50 is also by Vashti Hardy, and that is Wild Spark, which I managed to read this year. This is very steampunkish. So if you love a bit of steampunk, then this is the book for you. This one is set in a world where there are like these ghost machines where you can sort of put somebody's soul into a machine and it would come to life. This one follows Prue, and her brother had died years before, but she ends up getting invited to Medlock as an apprentice under her brother's name. This one is just so exciting because even from the beginning of her taking her brother's name and going into the incredible town or the incredible world of Medlock, you can just tell she's way over her head. Like, this is an adventure that's just so big for her, but she tackles it, she gives it her all. This is one where you just don't know if she's going to succeed or not, you don't know whether she's going to fail. The stakes just felt so high throughout it. This just gave me like the biggest love for Vashti Hardy's writing and Vashti Hardy's world building, so I just love Vashti Hardy, okay? Another one is The Secret of Birds and Bourne by Kieran Millward Hargrave. So this one is set in Siena, Italy, and this one follows Sophia and Ermin, and their mum is a bone binder, so she actually makes trinkets and charms out of the bones of loved ones and gives them to the families. But then one day, Sophia's and Ermin's mum is arrested, and they are forced to live at an orphanage. There's a strange mystery going on at this orphanage. Seems like some kids are going missing, and Sophia and Ermin have to try and escape the orphanage. They try to save their mum. It's just really one of those atmospheric and rather tense middle grade books, and I just absolutely love the mystery at the orphanage. Like, honestly, like, it's one of the best mysteries I've read in a middle grade. Wasn't expecting what came in like the last quarter of this book, and it's just beautifully written. Karen Mulwood-Hargrave is an absolutely gorgeous writer, and you can just tell, like, with her words and her worlds, that she just really puts everything into her books. And this is another just fantastic book that she's added to her bibliography. So yeah, I love this one. In my top 50 as well are the 13 Treasure series by Michelle Harrison. If I had to choose one though, I would say the second one, 13 Curses, is my absolute favourite from the series. So the 13 Treasure series follows Tanya, and she is gifted with a second sight. So she can see things that other people can't see. So for example, fairies, except these fairies are tricksters. They're kind of like the original dark fairy tales kind of creatures in this book, and I love that. Michelle Harrison is fantastic at incorporating really dark and atmospheric things in her books. And Tanya ends up getting sent to Elveston Manor to live with her grandmother, where she ends up getting embroiled in a mystery about a disappearance that happened years before. And it just, I love Michelle Harrison's writing style. I think she makes the best books on the planet. But I do absolutely love 13 Curses. We are introduced to a new character called Red in the second book. There is a really sinister hedge witch in this. But again, this is a series where just everything just builds and builds and builds in each book. It's the perfect trilogy. It blew me away. I absolutely love it. I honestly, again, Michelle Harrison can do no wrong in my eyes. These were her first books, and honestly, she started her writing career just at the top of her game, and she's just never gotten away from the top of her game. Like, seriously, she is just amazing. A Sprinkle of Sorcery, the second book in the Widdershins Adventure series, did come out in this year, but I read a proof of it in 2019, so that one is in my top books of 2019, and I'm currently reading A Tangle of Spells, which is the third book in that series, which is why it's not on this list, because I haven't finished it yet. However, these books definitely solidify their place in this list. Next up is Hide and Seeker by Dacre Herman. Again, I have to give so much credit to Neeks for showing me this book on Twitter and recommending it, so honestly, thank you so much, Neeks. So this one follows Justin, and his best friend Z went missing about a year before, and a year later, Z ends up coming back. However, he doesn't seem the same, and at Z's welcome home party, they play a game of hide and seek with a bunch of other friends, and one by one they start going missing, and there is this really ominous seeker. And honestly, this is quite a scary middle grade book, which is why I loved it so much. It was actually, it gave me one or two nightmares. Not gonna lie, there were some parts of this that definitely gave me nightmares. I actually loved how Dacre Herman built the world of the Seeker in this. Like, there is just so much fantastical elements that goes into that part of it, and it just, that took me by surprise as well, because I was just thinking, oh, it's just going to be the kids going missing one by one. There's more to it than that, but I don't really want to spoil it for you guys. And just everything about this one, it just had me on the edge of my seat. I read this outside, and I was camping outside. It was a rather scary experience, not gonna lie, and it just added to the atmosphere in this. So yeah, this one is an honest to god gem that more people need to read. It blew me away. Again, like, this one, oh, chef's kiss. And also the friendship group of Justin, Nia and Lyric in this was just, oh, so great as well. I love seeing their friendship. But yeah, this one, please pick it up. Another great ghost story that I really enjoyed was The Haunting of Evelyn Jones by Phil Hicks. Definitely in my top 50. This one's so short, which is great. Actually, even though I wished it was longer, it's, honestly, it just packs such a punch. This one follows a young girl called Evelyn, who ends up going to live with her aunt for a while, who lives on a cliffside in a small village. And Evelyn ends up coming across a book of ghost stories where the last story in that book has been scratched out, and she can't read what that story is, but it does involve a woman who kidnaps children. And that is all I really want to say about it, but it's just like such a great campfire story. Again, great to read around Halloween time. Or if you're feeling a little bit spooky, pick this one up. There are definitely elements in this that kept me rather scared. This is also going to be the first in a series of ghost stories, and I love that. Evelyn is a great protagonist, and I can't wait to see more of her. So yeah, you know, these are like short reviews and stuff, but I hope I'm like tempting you to get these anyway. Oh, and also I really love the small town vibe of this one as well. There is a bookshop and there is a man who owns a bookshop. I can't really remember his name anymore, but he was just so quirky and I loved his banter with Evelyn. It was just so good. Next up is Tilly and the Map of Stories by Anna James. This is the third book in the Pages and Core series, and the Pages and Core series follows Tilly. She is a book wanderer, and that means that she can sort of read characters out of books, but she can also go into books, and it's like this whole magical world and a great magic system where there are book wanderers all over the world, and you can do that. You can wander into a book, you can get characters to wander out of books. But this is the third book in the series. Things have been developing at the library, the underlibrary. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is like people in power who are kind of abusing their power. And Tilly ends up going to Washington DC in this book with her best friend Oscar. They just go on the best adventures. Honestly, this is charm and imagination and magic embodied in a book. I also love the illustrations by Paulo Escobar as well. It really does add to the fact that this book and this series is definitely an ode to the love of reading and the love of storytelling, and you can just feel it in every single page, either through Anna James's writing or through the illustrations by Paulo Escobar. Fans of the series are going to be so happy with this book because this is the best book in the series so far. The ending of this as well, there is just this huge Avengers Endgame moment. It was just so phenomenal. Loved the excitement that we were building up to in this book. Again, it just enriched the world. It just added more to the rules of the world, made it felt more real, and that it could possibly be real. The messages of believing in oneself, and believing in you, and believing in the magic of books and the magic of stories. It just comes through so much in this, and it makes it one of the best books I've read this year. So yeah, I loved it. One that is such a guilty pleasure for me is Kikis Delivery Service by Eiko Kidono, and this one is illustrated by Joe Todd Stanton. This is the book that inspired the Studio Ghibli movie Kiki's Delivery Service. This follows Kiki and her cat Gigi. Yeah, I love them too. They end up going to a new village where a witch has to sort of settle down and make her mark in a new village. And Kiki goes to this very small seaside village where she ends up setting up her own delivery service, and she delivers things to different people in the village. I love the writing style of this. It was so whimsical and just the small town feel of it. This was just like a cozy book. It wasn't overtly magical or anything like that. Like, there was the magical aspect that Kiki is a witch and she can fly, but there wasn't really anything beyond that that was really magical. It was really just about a young girl who's settled in this town, and she meets so many different quirky villagers and does so many different things. And I was loving it. Like, it didn't have to be really magical, didn't have to be really exciting. It was just a really cozy read, and it was, yeah, I love it. So it's in this one. It's a bit of guilty pleasure because it's not the best that I've read, but it's just one that I have such great memories about. So yeah, definitely in my top 50 as well is The Ship of Shadows by Maria Cosnia. So this one follows Ilia, and she lives in a Spanish harbour city, and one day the mythical Ship of Shadows docks in her city, and the Ship of Shadows is run by only women, and they are looking for something when they come here, and Ilia ends up finding it. She ends up joining the crew of the Ship of Shadows on this incredible seafaring adventure. There is a lost city in this as well, and that's, honestly, I love lost city stories, but I am a huge fan of pirate stories as well. This is definitely the best piratey story I've ever read in my life. This just gave me all of the Pirates of the Caribbean feels. This one, it was so female empowering as well. I love the Ship of Shadows, the imagination that went into that, the way that the ship just feels alive, and the way that magic is working in this world. It felt real again. Like, in this world, the magic felt real, and I guess that is just due to the incredible writing style. Cannot wait for more adventures in this world too, and yeah, again, so adventurous, so adventurous. I'm just so excited for the sequel. Cheating again, I have The Strange Worlds Travel Agency by L.D. Lipinski, but also the sequel, The Edge of the Ocean, which comes out in April 2021. I couldn't include one and not the other in this list. Seriously, I love them both so much. So Strange Worlds Travel Agency follows Flick, and she moves to a new town, and she comes across this really rundown looking shop. It's a travel agency where she meets Jonathan, who runs it, and in this travel agency there are suitcases, and when you step into a suitcase you get transported to another world, And there is this incredible adventure in the first one where it seems like the hub city, the city of firelights, is disappearing. There seems like magic is being taken away from this world. And Flick and Jonathan go on this adventure to, find out what's happening. There's also a mystery about what happened to Jonathan's father, and that is elaborated a bit more in the second book. And in the second book, Flick and Jonathan get this kind of summons by this pirate queen, and they go to this seafaring world, and this one is another great piratey story. I love the direction the series took because it just shows you the potential of this world. You could have any kind of imaginative story within this world. The possibilities are endless. So I absolutely adored the first book. It was just so imaginative, so adventurous, so well written. Again, I'm saying all of the same things, but it really is. And then In the Edge of the Ocean, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not gonna lie, there were some LGBTQ moments in this too. So we stand that in our middle grades. This is another series that is fast becoming one of my favorite series of all time, so please do check it out. Love the characters so much. Honestly, Jonathan is, I genuinely think he's one of my favorite characters. He can be so funny, but in such a dry way, and he's just so clever as well, and I just love Jonathan. Anyway, yeah, Strange Worlds Travel Agency 1 and 2, I'm not doing this list one without the other, so they're both in this list, I hope you don't mind. I am also including 2 books from the series in my top 50 of the year, and that is The Highland Falcon Thief by M.G. Leonard and Sam Sedgman, but also Kidnap on the California Comet, and this is the Adventure on Train series, and this is a mystery series that revolves around Harrison, or Hal, and his uncle Nat, and they go on trains and they solve mysteries. And honestly, it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. But in the first book, anyway, we come across a jewel thief on the Highland Falcon, and the Highland Falcon is the royal train that is making a tour around Britain, and Hal and his uncle have managed to score tickets on this train. But it is also up to Hal to find out who is the jewel thief. In the second book, the daughter of a billionaire goes missing and is kidnapped on a train. So both books are really exciting, and I honestly, just the train settings of this, I don't know what it is about them, but I'm just so engrossed by it, and I love how different and fresh each book has felt so far in the series. I've just been approved for Murder on the Safari Star on NetGalley, so I can't wait to read the third book, which comes out next year. But honestly, this series, it's on the right track. Just a little train pun there. It really did give me my love for mysteries this year, and I just can't stop loving it. And I love the characters too. I love Hal and his uncle. I love their relationship, and I just love how Hal solves the mysteries. He is just so clever. He's just a fantastic protagonist. And again, I just love the settings of this book series, so love it. I also have Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. Honestly, this is like the oldest book on this list, but I'm so glad I found it this year. Honestly, this is one of my absolute favourites of all time now. So this one follows Mindy, and she lives in the Valley of the Fruitless Mountain. Yeah. And she lives with her very poor parents, and her father usually tells her stories about the Man of the Moon and the Jade Dragon, and Mindy ends up going on an adventure to find the Man of the Moon to try and reverse her family's fortune. She ends up meeting lots of different characters on the way, but this book, the way it was told, the way the story was presented was just so whimsical. This was so magical. It was like a Studio Ghibli film, but in book format. It incorporated so many different kind of Chinese folk tales, but a lot of original tales by Grace Lynn as well. And I loved the way the stories weaved into it. So we had like stories within stories, and it just informed the narrative, and it was just so clever, and I loved how it did that. And honestly, I could reread this book over and over and over again. I just love a book that has a fantastic adventure, but also one where it keeps family at its heart. It has so many beautiful messages in this book that by the end of it, you just come away absolutely smiling. I love this book so much. Literally, definitely one of the best of the year. I am so late to the party with this one, but I can wholeheartedly say that, better late than never. Another absolute favourite of mine is Frostheart Escape from Aurora by Jamie Littler. Everyone knows Frostheart is one of my favourite books of all time, and this one, Escape from Aurora, is a sequel, and I can confirm is better than the first one in my opinion. I loved how this escalated the storyline. I love how the world was built even further. And, I should tell you what it's about. If you're new to my channel and you've never heard me talk about Frostheart before, Frostheart is a series that follows Ash. And we are in a world where everything is separated by the Snow Sea. So it's a very dystopian kind of snowy icy landscape. And everybody lives in strongholds across the Snow Sea, and there are pathfinders that go from stronghold to stronghold, given, materials and equipment and all of that. But Ash lives in the Fire stronghold, and he has the power to talk to Leviathans. He has the power to sing. He can songweave. And these Leviathans live in the Snow Sea, and they are monsters, and they are creating havoc, and people are scared of them. But people are also scared of Songweaver, so Ash keeps his powers a secret. One day, the crew of the Frostheart come, and Ash accidentally unleashes his powers and is kicked from the Fire Stronghold. But he joins the crew of the Frostheart to find his missing parents as well, because yes, his parents are also missing. But he has to find his parents, and their parents left a song for him to kind of decipher. And it's such a brilliant series. I love it. It's so magical and imaginative, and the world is incredible. And the second book, honestly, this book, sometimes it got me so emotional. The writing in this is fantastic. The illustrations by Jamie Littler as well are just out of this world, extraordinary. I cannot tell you how much I love this series so much. I love Ash. I love Tobu, who is his Yeti guardian. I love Luna, who is his best friend. I just love everything about this book series. It's just, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And yeah, honestly, I was so happy when I managed to read the second book. I was so anticipating it, and it just didn't disappoint whatsoever. And I cannot wait for the third and final book. I really can't. So yes, thank you so much, Jamie, for writing this incredible book. I love it so much. I love it, love it, love it. Also in my top 50 is A Kind of Spark by Elle McNichol. This one follows Addie, who is autistic, and she lives in a very small Scottish village. And in this small Scottish village, hundreds of years ago, a lot of innocent women were persecuted as witches. And our main character, Addie, she sees the injustice of it. She sees how different these women were treated because they themselves were a little different. And she wants to get justice for them. So she wants to build a memorial for them. And she goes to the town elder, she goes to town meetings to propose this. But people don't want to listen to her because one, she's a girl, two, she's autistic, and this is just a fantastic story about a young girl with ambition to get what she wants, and honestly, it is fantastic. I love it so much. Again, this is another contemporary, and I've been loving my contemporaries this year. Addie is such a fantastic protagonist. I feel like a lot of kids reading this will take so much from this as well. I feel like a lot of people will learn about neurodivergent people, and of course Elle McNichol is a neurodivergent author, so this is own voices, which makes this book even more brilliant. And just to see how Addie tries to change so many people's minds is so inspiring. There is a character in this who is probably my most hated character ever, and for a contemporary, that does say a lot for a contemporary middle grade. Anyway, considering how much fantasies I read, it opens your eyes, it brightens your future, it does everything to you that it needs to be done. So again, I cannot share enough love for this book and this author. Again, I love it so much. Another book that comes out in 2021 is The Hatmakers by Tamsin Merchant. This one follows Cordelia, and she is part of the Hatmakers. And Hatmakers, they can weave enchantments and kind of spells into hats, and they can make the wearer be more brave or more daring and things like that. They have different kind of magical properties, and they make things for the Princess of England, and England is sort of in the midst of a threat of war from France. So the Hatmakers are tasked to make something for the princess to help her in her discussions with the King of France to help stop the war. However, one day the hat that they make for the princess goes missing, and Cordelia ends up having to find what happened. I love this world so much. Honestly, this is a magical, gorgeous world. I probably don't do it justice when I talk about it. There is also a huge gay moment in this that I honestly loved so much. It's so imaginative. I've not read a middle grade like it. I just loved it so much. It felt very Edwardian. Kind of, that's the kind of vibes I got from this. It was just an absolute gem to read, seriously, and I loved every moment of it. But yeah, this now comes out in February 2021, not January, it's been pushed back, but I do have an upcoming middle grade releases video, which features this, and I cannot sing its praises enough. And I also have Green Glass House by Kate Milford. This one is a mystery that's set at Green Glass House. It's like the Smuggler's Inn, and it's set over the Christmas period where usually it goes really quiet. However, for some reason, this year, a lot of guests check in. We follow 12-year-old Milo, and he kind of wants to know what's happening. It's a great cozy mystery, and again, the atmosphere in this is fantastic. The wintry atmosphere. it makes you want to have hot chocolates constantly. And yeah, for cozy reads, you cannot get better than Green Glass House. I honestly sat smiling during the entire thing. Yeah, I need to start speeding up these things because, oh my gosh, my battery's dying and I still have a pile to go. Next up is The Midnight Guardians by Ross Montgomery. This one felt very Narnia-esque and I loved it. So this one is set during World War II, during the Blitz, and we follow Cal, who ends up getting evacuated from London to live with his aunt, but his sister stays back in London, and Cal one day comes across his imaginary friends who he had from childhood. So there is a tiger, a badger in a waistcoat, and a knight in shining armour, and they end up going on an adventure back to London to save his sister. There is a midwinter king who is threatening to plunge the entire world into darkness. We come across talking trees, we come across evacuees, we come across so much fantastic stuff in this book. Again, as I said, it was very Narnia-esque, and this is definitely going to be a future classic. It's one that I thought was written so brilliantly, and rather terrifying with the Midwinter King as well added in there, so yeah, loved it. Another underrated book in my top 50 is Orphans of the Tide by Stuart Murray. This one is set on the last city on Earth, and everywhere is now surrounded by water. This is the last city. One day, a whale comes up onto shore, and a boy is cut from the inside of this whale. He is being accused of being the enemy. Now, the enemy is this evil that keeps coming to this city over the years, and it can possess people, and it's just like this really great evil. However, our main character Ellie, she tries to save him, and it's honestly I would say it's kind of gothic. It was quite dark. It was just a total surprise. It's nothing like I've read before, and I just love the dystopian feel of this and being in the last scene on it. It just, oh my gosh, it just blew me away, and it kept surprising me even as I was reading it. And I just think this just needs way more love. So yeah, like honestly, this is a tricky one to talk about without spoiling. But there is a sequel coming and I can't wait for that too. Honestly, check this one out. It's gothic, it's surprising, and it's incredible. Next up is The Eye of the North by Sinead O'Hart. I was so surprised again by this one as well. It can be quite dark. But this was a recommendation from Jade, and honestly, loved it during Paulathon. And just like from the first line, it just hooked me in. So the first line is, "For as long as she could remember, Emmeline Widget had been sure her parents were trying to kill her." And I just knew from that moment on this would be one of my favourite reads of the year. So this one follows Emmeline, and she is told that her parents have disappeared, so she ends up getting shipped away to France, and she ends up coming across this very villainous Dr. Boer. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I think it's Dr. Boer. And he is trying to raise an evil or this monster from the north. And she ends up getting embroiled in that, and it involves her parents. It is a great polar fantasy. It was so exciting. It was very dark in places. It was dangerous, and the danger felt so real. Emmeline was just such a fantastic main character as well. And she ends up coming across a boy. Was he called Thing? Yeah, she comes across a boy called Thing as well. And he was just, oh my god, an absolute diamond. And I loved him and his backstory, and the characters in this were just great. Loved the setting. It's just a fantastic book all around. So yeah, another worthy top 50 contender. Another solid one in my top 50 is The 10 Riddles of It, The Quicksmith by Loris Owen. Again, another underrated gem, but this one follows Kip, and one day he gets this really cryptic, strange invitation to this College of Strange Energies. He has to like solve a riddle first to get there, and when he does get there and he enrolls, he ends up finding that there is a 400-year-old riddle set by Eartha Quicksmith, who was like the founder, and there are 10 riddles to solve, and it's been 400 years in the making. I loved the world that was built in this. There are time slips, there are wormholes, and it was just like science is magic. And the fact that science is like real, it made the magic feel real. Just the teaching at Quicksmiths as well, it just made it a place where I really wanted to go. The plot was so fast paced as well. They had 10 days to solve 10 riddles, and the entire school is trying to solve it as well. So it isn't just Kip and his friends, who I love. I love the friendship circle in that as well. It's everyone, so it's like a really big race against time, and it's just fantastic. Again, another underrated gem of a book, and I loved every page. So yeah, the absolute funniest book I've read this year, and definitely in my top 50, is The Super Miraculous Journey of Freddie Yates by Jenny Pearson. Honestly, there was a moment in this where I just laughed until I thought it. So this one follows Freddie, and he loses his grandmother, but he is told about his biological father and ends up trying to find him. He also takes Ben and Charlie on this adventure to find his biological father, and honestly, it's just hilarious. It's so adventurous, and not just that, but it's also very emotional. And I feel like what's great about humorous stories like this for kids is that they really balance the humor and the emotions so right. There will be moments in this where you'll be like tearing up and feeling really emotional, but it will just make you laugh the next minute and you'll start laughing and stuff. I've never had a book where it's made me do that before, but definitely the funniest book I've read this year, and I can't wait to read more funny books next year as well. Like, this one set the bar so high. It was a surprise for me as well because I've never really read humorous children's books before, and they're nothing to be sniffed at. Seriously, like, give them a try. And there's just so much in this for adults as well as kids in terms of humour. So if you love Shrek, then why would you not love Super Miraculous Journey of Friday Yates? You know, it's like Shrek is for adults and kids, right? So is this. So honestly, I loved it so much. I love Jenny P.S. and she is absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, I love this. Cannot wait to read her next book. She is just so funny, such a fantastic writer. Next up, I have Tinsel, The Girls Who Invented Christmas by Chevelle Pounder. Definitely another one I want you guys to read before Christmas if you can, because this one follows Blanche Close, and her biggest wish is to give presents and gifts to every single child in the world. Yeah, this is like the story behind Christmas, and in like told in like a different kind of way, like if we got things wrong during the years, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was very girl power. We had Blanche. I loved her relationship with her best friend Rinky, but Blanche does end up coming across the elves. There is Snorkus Porkus, there is magic, there is just so much heart and humour in this as well, and just so much to love about this book. Perfect for Christmas time. If you're a bit of a Scrooge, then this will definitely get you in the Christmas spirit. Also in my top 50 is Quintessence by Jess Redman. This one follows Alma, and she ends up moving to a new town called 4 Points, and she didn't want to move there, but one night she sees a starling fall from the sky, and she wants to find her and help her, and she ends up getting help from a shopkeeper, and there is like alchemy involved, and she ends up meeting these really quirky characters at alchemy club, no, it's astrology club, and they end up kind of having to form Quintessence in order to get the starling back home. And honestly, this was just again another really surprising adventure for me, and this came from an OwlCrate Jr book, and honestly they picked some of the best books ever, and it was like, this was like the perfect pick. Again, like the right amount of magic without being too magical. Love the main character as well. Like, she comes on such a journey. She is rather closed off to begin with, but I just love seeing how her relationships blossom with her new friends, and I loved it. So yeah, this is another really great one in this top 50. Oh, this one might actually be the oldest book on this list, I think. It is Percy Jackson the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. I had started reading this like 13 years ago, maybe, I don't know. But this one does follow Percy Jackson, and he ends up finding out he is the son of Poseidon, which makes him a demigod, and he ends up going to Camp Half-Blood. There is a thief who's stolen Zeus's lightning bolt, and Percy is the #1 suspect, so he has to like clear his name. This incorporates Greek mythology. It's just, this is a great series. Like, I loved reading this. I don't know why, but when I first started reading this like years ago, I wasn't feeling it. But as soon as I read it this time round, I must have just been in a better mood or something, because I was in love with it. I loved Percy Jackson as a character. Not so much in the second book, I'm not gonna lie, but in this book, I absolutely loved him. I loved his friendship circle as well. I loved the adventure they go on, and I can't believe I was so late to the party on this one. Rick Riordan's writing as well is just really accessible and really imaginative and creative, and I love the way he incorporates Greek mythology into the real world. He's just like an absolute god himself. So yeah, I really love this one. Also my top 50 is A Wish in the Dark by Christina Soon-Tornvet. This one is Les Miserables inspired. I can never say that. This one follows Pong, who was born in a prison, and for some reason he's not allowed out, even though he hasn't really committed a crime or anything, and one day he escapes. And then we have the Captain Warden's daughter called Nock, and she has to go after him because his escape means that her family will suffer because her dad is the warden of the prison. So there is this balance between doing what is right or what is good for your family kind of thing. And it was a really interesting aspect of this book. I really enjoyed, I love the setting of this. It was so gorgeous, and like I feel like the cover illustration really shines and shows you just how beautiful the inside of this book is as well. But yeah, this was like a really great adventure that had a lot of moralistic messages part of it as well, but not in a way that was very overpowering or like it wasn't like shoved down your throat or anything. It was just a really exploration of that, exploration of justice, and I really enjoyed the main characters as well and their sort of struggles. So yeah, this was a really good one and one that I didn't see a lot of people talk about, so definite top 50. Because I love me some gothic, The Vanishing Trick by Jenny Spangler. Honestly, this one, it surprised me as well, but this has one of the best villains I've ever read, and that is Madame Pinchbeck. Anyway, this one is about Leander, and he is an orphan, and this is set during like the Victorian times, and he ends up coming across Madame Pinchbeck, and she gives him a job, but she ends up trapping him in a locket, and she can summon him at will, but she has also done that to two other children, Charlotte and Felix. This is kind of their journey of trying to get out. Madame Pinchbeck uses them for like seances, and she likes to try and trick people. There's like this great thing towards the end where things just happen, and it's the kind of one of the best climaxes I've ever read in a children's book as well, I'm going to say that. Yeah, I just love the gothic feel of this. I haven't read a lot of middle grade gothic books. Like literally all I can give this book is praise. Love Leander, he was such a little cinnamon roll as well, and he was very determined, and his friendship with Charlotte and Felix was sometimes they would butt heads, but a lot of the times they would try and work together to escape Madame Pinchbeck. Madame Pinchbeck, again, fantastic villain. Great, great, great story. I love this one. I also have The Ghost of Goswater by Lucy Strange. Oh, love it. This one is set in the Lake District in 1899. It's like the last few days of the century. And this one follows Lady Agatha, who lives at Goswater Hall. However, after her father dies, it turns out that he was not her real father, and her real father is actually a poor man living in the Lake District, and she has to move in with him. But she also has this really cruel cousin Clarence, who honestly, a proper villain, a character I loathe. He honestly treats Agatha horribly. Anyway, there is like the Ghost of Goswater, there's a girl who sifts through time. However, that part of it isn't overpowering or anything. It is a little bit of a ghost story, but it's more like a historical fiction story that just felt really real. There are family secrets that Agatha is trying to uncover, and honestly the atmosphere in this again is just spot on. Lucy Strange is a fantastic writer. Loved everything about this, and not the fact that there was a character who's called Mr. Hetherington or anything like that. Honestly, this was just like on its own merit. So beautifully written, so interesting, so intriguing, with characters who are just so charismatic and they just leap off the page. So yeah, this is another fantastic one that I loved. Then I have Gargantus by Thomas Taylor. This is the sequel to Malamander, and this is part of the Legends of the Eries on Say series. The Legends of Eries on Say series follows Herbie Lemon, who is a lost and finder at the Grand Nautilus Hotel, and he can find lost things. And we also have Violet Palmer in the first book. She ends up coming to Grand Nautilus Hotel, asking for his help because she is lost, she is a lost thing, and they become friends. And in the second book, we have Erie on Say in huge danger because there was this big mythical creature called the Gargantus, and it seems like Erie on Sea is shaken at its foundations. There is terrible weather, and it's just so exciting from page one. This one, it's just a race against time kind of adventure. We have honestly so much danger and so much excitement around every corner. I love Herbie Lemon. He is honestly another great protagonist. This also kind of incorporates like fisherman folktales and like seafaring folktales into this. It's a sequel that just surpassed the first book, incredibly surpasses the first book. So if you're after a read that's very nautical, this one is perfect for you. Seriously, and yeah, I love the series so much. Right, I've only got 4 books to go now. Next is Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the 3rd book in the Nevermore series, and the Nevermore series follows Morrigan Crow, who is a cursed child, and she's doomed to die on her birthday. However, she is whisked away to the land of Nevermore by Jupiter North. And now Nevermore is this incredibly magical place. There is the Wondrous Society there, and I have my Wondrous Society pin on as well. And in the first book, Morrigan has to prove herself to be part of this magical society. And there's lots of things that goes on in this series, but in the 3rd book, there is this mysterious kind of plague that's going around, and it's turning the Wunimals very savage, and it's up to Morrigan to find out what's going on. And honestly, this is I love the Nevermore series so much. Hollowpox was just magic through and through. This world is just so rich and so vibrant. Jessica Townsend has literally made one of the best series on the planet. The plot was just so fast-paced, and it kept moving, and it was exciting, and it was dangerous, and I honestly didn't know what was going to happen. Loved the ending as well. Honestly, like, this series is going to go in such a direction that makes you scream for the next book. Like, literally right now, I'm obsessed with this entire world. There is literally not one negative I could ever give this series, and I'm just so passionate about this series. I love this series so much. In Hollowpox, honestly, I was so anticipating it, and it didn't let me down one bit. It was just, it blew me away. It was literally an incredible book and one of the best I've read this year. Definitely, like, probably the most fun book on this list is Dragon Mountain by Katie and Kevin Sang. This is the first book in the Dragon Realm series, and it follows young Billy, who goes to a kind of summer camp in the middle of nowhere in China. And he ends up befriending 3 people in the camp, and they come across 4 legendary dragons, and they have to like bond with them because there is this dragon of death that is threatening the entire world. And honestly, this is just so fun. I loved the dragon aspect of it, and even the atmosphere of where it's set too. I love the setting of being in the middle of China and the Dragon Mountain. It's just, it all works so well in this world. I love Buttons as well. Like, Buttons is my favorite. Like, and I'm not going to tell you who Buttons is either. You're going to have to read it to find out. I love the aspect of like bonding with dragons. This just promises to be the start of a magical series, so I'm really excited to see where this goes. This had quite an ending as well, so I definitely can't wait to see where the series goes. But yeah, this is definitely one for literally all ages. It's just so fun, so magical. 2 more to go. Next is Starfell, Willowmoss and the Lost Day by Dominique Valente. Honestly, the charm and the whimsy of this series is just so endearing, and this is the first book in that series. So we follow Willow, and she is the youngest of a long line of witches, and she can find lost things, and one day an entire day goes missing and she has to find it. She goes on an adventure to find it. There is witches, there is like dragons, there is goblins, there's just like so many great magical things happening in this world. And again, like Dragon Mountain, it's just really fun and really endearing and just so exciting, and the storytelling in this is so whimsical. The illustrations as well by Sarah Warburton, it adds another level to the story, and this is just brimming with magic, so this is another fantastic one to read, and the series, it just gets better from there, so please pick it up. And last but certainly not least is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warger. So this one follows Jude, and she lives in Syria with her mum, her father and her brother, but she has to escape Syria with her mum to Cincinnati, but she has to leave her father and brother behind. And she ends up starting like a school in America. There is this kind of difference between being Syrian and being American, and kind of how these two worlds are literally coming together. I absolutely loved the storytelling in this because it's told in verse, and it's just one of the most beautiful books I've read this year. I did a live show for Mrs. Dunn Reads as well. It was one of the best live show discussions I've ever done. We were so on point with the discussion for that. We loved it so much. The messages in this, it is so positive and uplifting and emotional, and Jude says so many times things that made me stop, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that hits hard, you know, that was just so poignant. And honestly, I feel like a lot of kids will take a lot from this as well, so teachers, if you're watching this, put this in your classrooms. This is, honest to God, one of the best books I've read this year. Yeah, I've said that. Yeah, I've said that a few times, but honestly, when I say this is my top 50, I could not leave any of these books out. I would not have left this book out at all either. So if you love books that actually have an important message and an important meaning, then this one is definitely for you. And the whole verse novel as well. 2019 Gav just wouldn't have picked them up. 2020 Gav, honestly, now will pick up any verse novel and love it. Check this one out. Please give this one a chance because it is important. It is phenomenal. It is just fantastic. I feel like I've run a marathon. And those are the 50 books, and although there was probably more in there, not gonna lie, those are pretty much the 50 books that made my top 50-ish of the year for middle grade. Not just, you know, the ones published this year, but ones that I read backlist and ones that are coming out next year as well. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. I dread to think how I'm going to edit it because this is probably going to be really long. I'm so sorry. But I hope you guys got some really great recommendations out of it as well. 2020 was an incredible year for middle grades. There were so many incredible stories coming out. We are at the peak of middle grade fiction. Like seriously, I feel like we're going to get better from here as well. I'm just loving middle grade at the minute, and I'm surrounded by amazing books, and I didn't want to have any less. There are more books that I would recommend for middle grade that I read this year, but these are definitely like the top 50-ish of those books. And I appreciate you guys watching. If you're still here, I appreciate you watching. So please leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment, let me know if you've read any of these books or what your favourite books of 2020 was in terms of middle grade. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh.